To mount your scope on your 1200G, you'll want to make sure that the scope is arranged to where this text is pointing back toward the shooter. You also want to make sure that these turrets, one is pointing up, one is pointing to the right. You'll then take your rings and make sure that the screw is facing toward the right-hand side of the scope. And you're just going to put the top on. You're not going to crank down the screws. You want it to be loose. You'll do that on both the front and the back half of the scope. They should be able to move freely forward and backward. And the next thing that you'll do is you'll mount those rings onto the dovetail. You want to make sure that they are gripping the dovetail on both sides. You also want to make sure that your back ring is up against the scope stop. This will keep your scope from wandering. These guns have a lot of recoil, and if you don't do that, you'll lose your point of aim. I usually like to try to space them fairly wide. You just want to make sure those are torqued down evenly. Don't torque them so much that you'll strip out the heads on those screws. The next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that this turret is pointing up, this one's pointing to the right. And you want to adjust that so that you have a perfect view when you shoulder the gun as you would normally shoot. Don't move your eye to the scope, move your scope to the eye. You also want to make sure that your crosshairs are perfectly straight up and down. And then what you do is you just tighten. I normally start at the front left, then I'll do the rear right, then I'll do the rear left, and then I'll do the front right. And you just alternate that pattern until your scope rings are tight. Your scope is now mounted, and it's time to head out to the range and sight it in.